Hey y'all, it's Will. So, about within the last couple weeks, things about a couple weeks ago, I had this dream, and it was um, instigated by a lot of my research. Right, as you know, I go into the original languages quite a bit. I like to actually look at what is actually being said and meant. Um, Biblically and extra biblically about Christianity or other religions. You can take that in a wide scope into any area of life as well. But as you know, this channel focuses on Jehovah's Witnesses and um, in the Bible a bit, quite a bit, obviously, right? And so I had this dream because what I've discovered is I see a lot of misinformation out there, especially in the religious realm, as compared to what's actually said um, biblically. So I had this dream a couple weeks ago, and in it, it was, I would say, probably a representation of the devil looking out over the world and saying, "Look at our creation," talking about the current state of humankind and the state of the world, like kind of how God after creation looks out and says, "This it's good," right? And so I had this dream that the devil looks out and he says, "Man, look at my creation. This is pretty cool, right?" And so in the course of the last couple weeks, there's been five movies that I've watched that I kind of felt urged to because of that dream. And well, at least four of them were because of the dream. So I'll start out with George Orwell's, the pen name of George Orwell, in his novel 1984, which was released in 1949. So, fairly recent post World War II. Now, it shows a totalitarian government, and one of the good quotes from that novel and the movie would be that he who controls the present, or he who controls the past controls the present, and he who controls the present controls the past. And you look at the comparisons with totalitarian governments. Obviously, Nazi Germany, you have the attempt to control history, right? And telling people how things are and erasing history. You can find that in a lot of our own government. You can see that the origins of things have been lost and what things meant. Something as simple as separation of church and state. There's nothing about separation of church and state constitutionally. That was taken from a letter where someone wrote into, man, I'm drawing a blank. Was it Franklin or Jefferson wrote in and said, "Hey, we're worried uh, about our church being taken over or not allowed or something like that." And in that letter, the response was that there's, um, it's not, the government's not responsible for your religion or won't control your religion. And that's where you have this myth about there being anything about separation of church and state in the Constitution. It doesn't exist, right? It's taken from a private letter written to a government representative uh, hundreds of years ago. And you look, and I'm not supporting either way with that. I'm just stating it's just a statement. I I don't really do a whole lot of politics. I think it's all BS. But well, yeah, I won't get into that now. So when we look at totalitarian, you even look in recent history with ISIS and destroying some of the ancient sites in, what was it, ancient Mesopotamia, Iraq, Babylonian type region, and you have an attempt to rewrite or destroy history so they can say it is the way it is, the version of it that they want. You look at Jehovah's Witnesses and how the old publications, oh, you have to look at the recent stuff. You can't look at the old stuff, and how they want the old publications turned in or destroyed. And because when you go back and you start reading the old stuff, in particular from the beginning with Russell and then with Rutherford, you look at those writings, and if the origins of things matter, then there's no way you could accept Jehovah's Witness as a true religion or as the truth about the Bible. It doesn't line up. And again, with 1984, that's where we get terms like Big Brother as well. There's quite a few. Even the term Orwellian is, again, it's all based off of this novel 1984 by George Orwell, which was his pen name. What was his actual name? Eric Arthur Blair, pen name of George Orwell, and wrote the novel 1984. If you haven't read the book or you haven't seen the movie, it's an amazing read or watch, and I think you would have a hard time not making a lot of connections, even if you're under a totalitarian regime that you think is the truth. Another movie that I watched on that vein or three movies. I watched the Matrix trilogy, and man, like when I was younger, when I first watched it, and before I had really done any research about Jehovah's Witnesses outside of proving it for myself biblically false when I was 16, when I watched the Matrix trilogy in the last couple weeks, so much stuff was jumping out at me that I just hadn't seen when I had first watched it. And it had been many years since I had seen it. And it was just kind of mind-blowing to me to catch all kinds of stuff that was in there about deceiving the masses that I just didn't see initially, right? Again, so I think of that dream where the devil's looking out and saying, check out my creation, right? Look at what I have made. And I also watched the movie Joker, which was pretty dark. But I think from a psychological and sociological perspective, it was a very fascinating take on a comic book genre character. And it made me think of Jehovah's Witnesses and also all cult-like organizations that, or society, or you could kind of take it as far as you want. But I saw so many similarities with how people are mistreated and abused, and at some point, some people aren't going to put up with it. Now, most people will. I know I've said this before, but you look at the atrocities throughout human history, and it takes quite a bit to get the general masses to rise up. You're going to have very few people that will fight bad and evil things from the beginning. It usually takes an immense amount of pain and suffering to mobilize the masses. And so you look at psychologically a movie like Joker, and it's kind of like he's just pushed to the point of, he's one of those people that just can't take it anymore. But he's had a difficult life. He has psychological problems, right? And then he finds out everything he knew was a lie. And he finally ends up acting out because of that. And it made me think of Jehovah's Witnesses exiting their totalitarian regime, and how it can destroy you and push you to the edge Now, obviously, he's a comic book thing, so it's different. But you can also see that people snapping and the suicides and craziness that can happen. And I guess that's the whole thing of this. I would really suggest, if you have not read 1984, to read it, or if you haven't, if you don't feel like taking the time to go read that, at least watch the movie 1984. And it was it was cool to see it again and to make a lot of connections, just be reminded of stuff that we kind of take for granted, and some sayings we use and where they came from, and why that book has had such a huge impact on our culture in the West, because it has had an enormous impact on our culture. And it just, you don't even have to read the novel to see that. You can watch the movie and see that. So I guess that's the thought for this video: is Jehovah's Witnesses slash totalitarian regimes, be it governments or groups of people, and how you can see these themes and relate that to movies like 1984, The Matrix, and Joker. So yeah, that's it for today. I've got some other stuff, but I'll no new Greek or Hebrew words on this one. Y'all have a good one.